Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my first impressions of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Of course, this is the first episode of the series, a nice little sneak peek. I checked it out on YouTube. I assume it's on, Nickelodeon site, but YouTube is just way easier for me. It was interesting. Going into the show, of course, coming off of the epicness that was the last TMNT series. Even though they treated like crap at the end, I'm going to be mad about that forever, the way they treated like the last season of the last show, considering how great it was. But going into this, it was like, all right, they're ending the series that, I loved. Like, they had some amazingly epic moments in the last series. It, of course, looked awesome because it was done in 3D. And so I was like, all right, we're going into this new series, Rise of the TMNT. 2D animation style, no real big deal there because pretty much all of the TMNT stuff that I've known has been 2D, not counting, the video games. So I was like, all right, 2D is no big deal. Different voice actors, of course, that's weird. That's just a general thing whenever you go into something with the same characters but different voices. It's just weird. That's just how it is. Last series is actually a perfect example. They had to get a different voice actor for Leo, and it was super weird with Seth Green coming in, and then eventually it was just like, okay, that's Leo's voice. So voice acting was just like, it's weird, but no big deal there. And then it was the style itself that I think was like the biggest thing going into it, where I was like, I just don't know. Like, it seemed a little too weird to me. From the trailers and how the characters looked, I was like, I don't know if I like the designs as much. And, little stuff like that. But watching the episode, I actually really enjoyed it. First off, super funny. I was super happy that it was as funny as it was because I was cracking up. Like, some of the stuff they did was hilarious to me. Like, it made me laugh a lot. I was like, I love this. I assume the main villain that we got isn't actually dead. And he better not be because I need the two little demon things, which was also a cool design because I thought it was like his armor and then they jump off and they're actually living creatures. Hilarious. So they had like, the first line they had was them talking about the calamari actually being like pig buttholes, which I thought was hilarious. I was like, that's super funny, but also real. So that I thought was great, and they were super funny. I like April in this and how she's actually a big part of the action, and they make it less serious, honestly, because obviously she's human. She's not like the turtles and stuff. Even they survive some stuff that they normally wouldn't, in most other series where it's more realistic. They're dropping from like insane heights. They're getting like blown up, all sorts of crazy stuff. And she's fighting these two little demon things with like, this little green stick she found, and they're like flying around with her, and she's just fighting throughout the episode, like towards the end. And that made me laugh. Like, she's just in the background. You just hear the sound effects of her like fighting against them. So I thought that was super funny. I like the fact that she's in the action a lot. Obviously, April is black in this. She's played by Kat Graham, who I know because of the Vampire Diaries. So I was like, oh, I already knew that, but I was like, that's cool. The characters actually watching the episode, I was like, I actually like the design. I actually thought they looked cool. Raph is like ridiculously huge, and it was just like someone mentioned in the comments he got the Knuckles treatment, which I thought was hilarious, but very appropriate there. But he's huge. Donnie, I think they did a perfect job where he's of course got like the 3D the specs with the blue and red. I thought that was awesome. And we also find out that his shell, technically we don't actually see his shell because it's always like this tech bike hover thing, which I thought was super cool. I was like, that I thought was actually really awesome. And April's like, can I get a ride? And then it like expands out and it's like a bike jetpack thing, and then he uses it to fight. Of course his bow staff is like highly tech based, so he has like all these different enhancements and stuff, and he like spins it with the rockets. He turns it into a fist, and it seems like it detached from the stick itself and almost like shot as just a flying fist during the end segment. But I thought that was super cool, and that was their way of giving him his special stuff, where everyone else's, all their weapons get destroyed, and then they pick up magic weapons. So Mikey gets the nunchucks, where it's like basically a fire demon. When he spins it really fast, like a fire demon comes out, so he has to control that. Raph gets like Tonfa, which I gotta admit, I thought that was like the coolest thing ever, when he like his weapons get destroyed and he gets Tonfa. And that's what the weapons are called. But I was like, I've never thought of that, but that works perfectly for Raph being the character that he is. Like, he has the side, which of course are up close, just like pretty much all the weapons are technically up close. But that's about as close as you get outside of basically using like, claws or brass knuckles to using, like hand-to-hand combat. At least as far as, the turtles and stuff goes. So I was like, that I thought was a fantastic idea to see him with a new weapon. For everyone else, it made sense to kind of keep it the same, but for Raph, I was like, that works perfectly. Like, he's always been the more, go for broke fighter. So it makes sense to give him a weapon that's more brawl based rather than, you know, he can still block, of course, because they're long and they go, down your arm. But I was like, I like the way that that works, and it's useful for, like bashing sideways and stuff like that. So it's almost like he's fighting with his fist the entire time, and I was like, that fits perfectly for Raphael. So I was really happy with that change, and it was something I don't think I've ever considered. I don't think I've ever really thought of that before, and it was like, of all the things to change, that was one thing where I was like, you change their iconic weapons. It's almost like changing their colors a little, and they changed the weapon, and I was like, that's like the perfect choice for him, and it worked perfectly. I thought that was like the greatest choice for him, so I thought that was super cool. I'm excited to see more of that. We don't really get to see him use his power much, but it's basically like sonic booms, from his fist. Like he hits his fist together and it knocks him back. So super punches, once again, that's perfect for him. Mikey, with him being the wild style character, it works perfectly that he gets like a crazy fire demon, and then Leo gets like a teleporting katana, which I thought was like super sweet. So I can only imagine what they would do with that, considering some of the stuff that they've shown just in this episode without them having any control. I was like, I could see that being just utterly ridiculous. So looking forward to them using that. Speaking of action, I actually thought it was really cool. I like the stylistic action that they chose. I like the way the characters actually look. Now that I get to see them, in action, I thought it was cool. They basically have like tattoos a little bit. Like each character has like little spots here and there. All their shells look different. Like Leo has like a different design on his back, and there was a part where it looked like his shell was actually glowing. And that may have been from when he was using the blade and it was just like electricity around him and stuff. But I was like, well, that's kind of cool. The shells look different. Like Mikey basically has like tattoos that are like in curves around his eyes, and he's got like little spots somewhere else. I was like, I like that idea. Like all their shells look totally different. Like I said, with Donnie, technically we don't even see his. So I was like, all right, I like the style of this. I like the way the characters are. Personality wise, that was definitely like the interesting part. Was like, it's a little weird with them being so different. Because it seemed like it was really drastically different. Like I feel like, especially for Leo, that was the main thing where he wasn't, of course, not as experienced. Of course, if anyone didn't catch it, Raph is the leader in the series, so of course that was like the big thing. Which the only time I've really seen that touched on was the TMNT movie that they had, like the 3D one, which I love that movie. Especially Raph versus Leo. That's still one of my favorite like Ninja Turtle things ever, is when they fight on that rooftop. But in this, I thought it was cool. Raph is the leader. Leo was like almost unsure a little bit, like he's kind of got it, but not really. So I was like, all right, that's interesting, and I'm sure at some point we'll see that transition. I don't know if they're gonna keep it permanent, or with Raph as the leader, if that'll be a part of the storyline where Leo does eventually become the leader of the Turtles, and they decide to switch or whatever. But either way, I think it'll be interesting to see how they utilize his character, because that's always been a thing, is that he was the more serious one. So now that he's like kind of a part of the comedy there, which is really funny, because I feel like all of them are silly, and so it's not as distant. It's almost like, it's a weird comparison, but it's almost like the 80s version where they're all really silly about it, but there's still just enough variation that it's perfect. Like Donnie, when he was going into the lab, he's like, oh, I would love to do my lab in this style and stuff. And it's like, oh, it's like science and technology had a baby, or magic and technology or something. And I was like, that's super funny. Like, he was hilarious through that episode. Of course, Mikey was funny, but Leo was in it too. So I was like, all right, I like the way they're doing that, and it'll be interesting to see, because I don't want to see clumsy Leonardo, which is kind of how I felt in this episode. I was like, I don't want him to be like clumsy. He doesn't have to be like, perfect Leo, but I was like, I don't want him to be like clumsy and stuff. Like, leave that to Mikey. But I felt like they kind of had that moment, like when they were all on the vines, and Leo's the only one that couldn't do it, and he's like just holding on and sliding, and everyone else is doing cool. And I was like, I feel like that should have been Mikey. That was like the one thing where I was like, that just seems like a little too off, for Leonardo for me. But throughout the episode, still really enjoyed it. Definitely loved the animation. The action was definitely cool. They had some great shots there too. Well, with Leo actually, where they show the blade like running across the ground. Just the angle of that I thought looked really, really sweet. So I like the way they did the animation for the action, the crazy angles that they had. And then of course it got super nuts. I actually love the design for the villain, honestly. And then the way he uses his powers, I thought looked really cool. And he's like making the vines like pop out of the ground, and then he uses to whatever. Like basically he's the reason that they're mutants. So he like crushes one of the orbs in his hand, or two of them, and then he gets like the crazy purple arms, and they can turn into blades and stuff. I was like, this is actually pretty sweet. Like, I like the design, I like the way it was handled. It was just a very fluid, it was definitely anime style, it was anime-esque, and it would be like that really loose style of art, and I definitely loved it. So really enjoyed this first episode. I think the characters were funny. I think the action was good. I like April in this because, like I said, she's actually, it's not as serious, so she's a part of the action, which I actually think is really cool. Like the scene where they, I think it was when they like first dropped down to get all the weapons, she like falls down, and the way they did the animation was that she was like basically a figure, and she lands on them and flips, and there's no like normal physical motion to it. She was literally basically it was just like this. She just fell down and then did that and then was standing straight up, and I was like, that was ridiculous, but it was super funny to me. Like, I just love that scene. So definitely excited to see where we're going with the show. Like I said, the only thing really is like the Leo thing. I don't want him to be super clumsy. Splinter actually was another thing. I just flat out don't like the design for Splinter, and the main reason, he literally looks like a cat. Like, I was like, he doesn't even look like a rat to me. He looks like a cat. He was kind of like a fat blob a little bit, and then he was just like lazy and stuff, and maybe that'll change as they, you know, continuing through the series. It'll be a little bit different, but I was like, that was the one thing where I was like 100% I don't like this at all. So it's like, I don't really like the design because he doesn't even, like, for me personally, I was like, I feel like he literally looks like a cat. Like, that's how I felt when I was looking at it. I was like, he actually looks like a cat to me. And then just the fact that he was like this, you know, kind of super lazy character where he's like their dad and stuff, and he's like, you know, I'm watching, and it would be funny, you know, he's like, I'm watching my stories or something, but it was just like, he just didn't, you know, he wasn't cool, like, in any way, shape, or form. He didn't seem like Master Splinter to me. So that was like the one thing where I was like 100% just like, that's a no for me. But, you know, I'll have to get used to it, or maybe they'll change it up a little bit and we'll see more serious versions. It was, you know, of course, it's the first episode. Master Splinter doesn't need like a big focus in it. Of course, they're introducing the turtles. They jump right into it too. You know, introducing the turtles, April. They somewhat reference, I assume that this will come into play, but they do reference like the party where the guys getting like the gold and stuff, and the turtles like, you know, slide over them, and it ends up being a comedy bit where they're actually going to the pool in the next building. And I'm like, that could be foreshadowing. That might actually lead to something. But of course, we have like our main villain, unless he actually did get crushed. We get introduced to this whole underground city. Like, we see the main villain's lair, but there was like a whole underground thing there. So I'm like, they're definitely going back to that. It's technically underneath the city. We find out it's not like another dimension, which is also a really great joke. He's like, it seems like we're in like a tertiary multiverse or something, and then it's like, yeah, we're actually just super far underground. He's like, that was going to be my second guess. So I thought that was a great line there. But all in all, I'm looking forward to the show coming out in September. We'll see what they end up doing. I assume, considering they put the first episode out to kind of gauge it, they'll probably end up doing like an hour-long premiere. So I'll be checking that out and definitely coming back to the show. But I am happy to say that I really enjoyed it, because I was definitely worried, and I wasn't even really gonna watch it, but I saw like 2 YouTubers that I like checked it out, and I was like, well, I don't want to watch this and spoil it. So I was like, screw it, you know, I'll check it out, and I wanted to do my video on it because I actually had a good time with it. So if you haven't seen it, even though I kind of spoiled, you know, obviously some elements here, I highly recommend it. I think it was actually pretty fun, definitely funny. That was like the craziest thing about it. I laughed way more than I expected to, and that made me enjoy it even more, because I was like, all right, they did a lot of comedy, but it was actually good. The worst thing is like a bunch of stupid jokes. And I was like, these are good jokes. These are fun, funny jokes. So I was very happy about that. But all in all, looking forward to the new series. Excited to see, you know, new versions of, you know, Shredder and stuff. That was the main thing with it being so funny. I was like, where is this gonna go? Like, when it gets serious, is it gonna be like, this is a crazy anime reference, but is it gonna be like Gintama, where the whole show is like comedy and then it gets serious, it's like dark serious? Or is it gonna be almost like, you know, the 80s version of Shredder, where it's funny, but he's serious. He's just serious enough, but the other characters are so funny, it kind of brings his seriousness down a little, because, you know, Bebop and Rocksteady eventually got to come in, and they'll be, I can only imagine how silly they'll be with this show just from this first episode. I can only imagine, but looking forward to it. All in all, definitely want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it, and naturally, with this being the sneak peek, did it interest you? Are you going to check it out? Are you not going to check it out? Like, you're just casting it off because you hated it? Definitely all in. Like, personally, I would say I'm all in on this. So I would love to know where you guys are. All in, kind of right in the middle, you give it a second chance, or it just sucked to you. So I would love to know what you guys think about it and what you're looking forward to seeing, if you are, of course, interested in the show. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.